Hello and welcome to this week's edition of Politics Today, and in this programme we shall be discussing the shocking new legislation to come out of Scotland that if you find yourself standing up for the unborn at an abortion clinic up in Scotland, not only could you face a criminal record but also a £10,000 fine. And to discuss these issues today, I'm joined by Maureen and Martin, who's the Parliamentary Officer for the Society for the Protection of the Unborn Children, and together with John Deighan, who's the Chief Executive of the Society for the Protection of the Unborn Children. So welcome to the programme. And John, it's a pleasure to have you on the programme, so warm welcome to Politics Today. And on behalf of myself and our viewers, we're very grateful that you're still allowing Maureen to appear regularly on this programme, as she's such an excellent contributor to this programme. But can you just share with us how you came to faith in Jesus Christ and how you got involved in campaigning on behalf of the unborn child?
It's a hard one to answer because I grew up in a believing Catholic family. So from being a young child, I was very aware of my faith. I'm quite a logical person, so it always made sense. I studied science. It always made sense. It was always part of the family, so I always grew up. In my mid-20s, however, I did attend, it was called Life in the Spirit seminars. I did attend that, and that did give me sort of a zeal, I suppose, a greater zeal in putting that into practice. And around about the same time, I was involved in a local SBUC branch in East Kilbride. And so I suppose taking my faith more seriously, doing work in the pro-life movement, the two things came together. So it's very much a manifestation of my core beliefs. But I think anyone can be pro-life. I think that's the thing, but I think typically Christians can see it better. We have a reference point outside of our current culture, and it's a spiritual battle as well. And I think there's something about an access to our faith that gives us an insight into the spiritual dimension of this as well. So I've always been a Christian, but when you get more involved in the pro-life movement, you start to realise that you need your faith more. So I think typically that's what I found with lots of people. They see the injustice of abortion, and as they start to explore the truth and the reality of how can we have such evil in our society, it strengthens their commitment to their faith. So it's certainly strengthened my faith. But yes, from a child, I was fully Christian. I always saw no incompatibility with my life or my wife.
That's good to know. Don't get into trouble. And John, you are the Chief Executive of the oldest Christian organisation in the UK, if not the world, that's campaigning on behalf of the rights of the unborn child. So share with us a brief history of this ministry, which is the Society for the Protection of the Unborn Child, and your role and vision as the Chief Executive.
Yeah, so in 1966, a few Anglicans came together, and they decided that they had to do something about the abortion bill that was being presented before Parliament at the time. And in 1967, they actually launched the Society for the Protection of Unborn Children. So it was typically Anglicans at that time. Then more Catholics started to get involved, and then that became quite a feature of it, that for whatever reasons, like Catholics were drawn to the pro-life movement in terms of the grassroots level. We always had really strong support with evangelical Christians. We used to have a division within SBUC called Spuck Evangelicals. Sadly, the people involved in that have passed on. But so we've got a very long tradition. We've traditionally been fighting at the cutting edge of the political and parliamentary debates for the last 5 and more decades. But what's become more apparent in the last decade, I suppose, is that the hearts of politicians has become so hardened that we have to do something beyond Parliament. So what I've tried to do as the Chief Executive over the last 3 years is broaden our reach in terms of what we're doing to try and change culture. So we're looking just now at what I call a culture shaping strategy, and that is what can we do to be the new creative minority in the different culture shaping areas of society. So we're reaching out through that to education, to medicine, to law, and also into the creative industry. So we've done things like we do drama. We've had a film made that's available on Amazon Prime. So we're trying to do that in conjunction with the political work. And I do believe as we change culture, that will be what prepares the way for a change politically.
Thank you so much for telling us about the great ministry and the work you're doing. And here is an excellent video that really does show how the Society for the Protection of Unborn Children is on the front line outside Holyrood in Scotland.
Came out here today because it is indeed a very dark day for Scotland with the legalisation of buffer zones, which means more dead babies in Scotland and a lot more damaged and hurt women. This is absolutely atrocious, and we are here today to speak up for the unborn, to speak up for women who are damaged as a result of abortion. It's a clear attack on the freedom of prayer, freedom of thought, and the government, the pro-abortion lobby, who are celebrating and championing the deaths of unborn babies, want to take away that freedom, and so that's what they're doing today by legalising buffer zones. And we are out here in our numbers from all different backgrounds, all different ages, to speak up against the atrocity of abortion, the loss of such innocent lives, to the barbaric reality of abortion. I'm encouraging more people to speak out against the reality of abortion, and I'm really impressed by the amount of people that have turned up today and are courageously speaking up for the unborn.
Well, to be honest, the first issue with this law that's coming into effect that we're here to counter-protest essentially today and to pray against the authoritarian proposal is that it sets the precedent that somebody in the government can control the minds of innocent civilians. And is that really the power we want to give to government? I'd say no. We're meant to live in a liberal democracy. That doesn't sound democratic to me. A lot of these politicians like to virtue signal about keeping religion out of politics, but enforcing secular theology on innocent religious people just gathering to pray for innocent children and mothers, is that really the laws we want to bring forward? It sets a dangerous precedent for the future. So essentially I'm here today because I have a moral obligation to oppose this law, and the second thing is I'm also here to pray for the unborn and their mothers.
I've had the sad experience of dealing with women who have had abortion, not just women but even teenage girls. And I feel quite often, I've written to Gillian Mackay about this, I feel that if they had had someone who could have offered them some help, support, advice, then the children who were aborted would be alive today.
There you go, and that just shows some of the great activism being done on behalf of the Society for the Protection of the Unborn Children, and that was outside of Holyrood, the Scottish Assembly in Edinburgh. Maureen, it's great to have you on the programme, particularly great that you can bring your boss with you as well. But kind of share with us, to our viewers, why it's so important, particularly at a parliamentary level, to raise awareness on the plight of the unborn, particularly now as we see from that excellent video that Scotland is about to, or has actually implemented legislation which means that any Christian wanting to stand up for the unborn outside an abortion clinic would not only have a criminal record but also then face a £10,000 fine in the process.
Absolutely. It seems vital that we engage with parliamentarians because ultimately they make the votes. They make the decisions, and sometimes, well, most of the time, it's a vote of conscience. So we have to inform them. Then maybe their conscience is still persuaded certain ways, but if they are armed with information, then at least they can potentially persuade their fellow parliamentarians to maybe see things a different way. I had a meeting yesterday with a prominent MP who was glad to receive more information. They were on our side, thankfully, but they were eager to receive as much information as possible, particularly about the assisted dying situation that is now before us. So I was able to provide that MP with more information, statistics from Canada in particular, because you know they've gone down a particular road and they're far advanced in the assisted dying route than we are. We haven't started it, hopefully we don't, but they are advanced in that area. So I was able to provide him with information. That's the whole thing about what we're doing as a parliamentary officer and as a SPOC representative, is providing information to people who make the decisions. And those are our parliamentarians and our politicians.
Excellent. And John, would you just give us an overview situation on the UK regarding Parliament and particularly the kind of viewpoint from parliamentarians when it comes to the issue of abortion? Because we know that, for example, in the US presidential election, the issue of abortion is one of the major political topics and will actually decide whether Christians come out and vote for Donald Trump and the Republican Party.
It's quite different in the UK. We don't have any strong voice really coming from the pro-life side. It's quite attached in the States with the Republicans and Democrats. We don't have that. We've got a lot worse. We have pretty much every party is strongly committed to that. It's pretty much driven by a few fanatics. So there are a few MPs who are absolutely determined to get abortion to birth. That's the key thing that they're aiming for. They would say that they want to remove any taint of criminality from abortion. So this is what drives them. They tend to set the agenda, and sadly the people in the middle go with that. So we've had some notable politicians in the past who've stood up to try and give the counter voice, but I'm afraid it's been a slide in the wrong direction for a long time. So we've seen a constant expansion of that. We've seen the law really not applied, because most abortions just now would not fall under the criteria that were established in the 1967 Abortion Act. That supposedly was meant to be very narrow for very extreme circumstances, but we now know that anyone can more or less ask for an abortion up to 24 weeks. If it's a case of suspected disability, they can actually have an abortion right up to birth. So it's quite appalling as it is. But they took the opportunity during the COVID lockdowns to propose that women could get abortion pills at home. Again, that's outside the Abortion Act as it was framed in 1967. We took that to court, and I was quite astounded at the mental gymnastics they were able to do. The law as it stands says that an abortion should take place in an approved medical facility under the supervision of a medical professional. Just now, women have been sent an abortion pill or abortion pills through the post. They don't see any medical professional whatsoever if they're doing that. They then apply the pills, and that induces the abortion at home. So it's totally outside the 1967 Abortion Act. But now what we've got is politicians trying to play catch up. They're trying to get the law to actually say that that's actually what is allowed. So we really need a voice, and thankfully SPUC now has Maureen, and we also have another parliamentary officer, David, working in Parliament to make sure that we provide with the facts on that, because a lot of them just listen to the soft sell of this. This is all about compassion, it's all about respecting the autonomy of women, and they forget the reality of this is a barbaric, brutal thing about the ending an innocent human life, which actually greatly damages women as well.
Absolutely. Maureen, I just want to unpack some of this legislation, which is absolutely horrific. The Scottish Government has now implemented legislation that dates back to September, that they will impose buffer zones of up to 200 metres around abortion facilities in Scotland, and all pro-life activity, even silent prayer, which is said to influence women attending the facility, is outlawed within the zone. And if you don't comply, you could have a criminal record forever, but also face a £10,000 fine. Just share with us how draconian and how barbaric this new legislation is, but this is doing nothing to help mothers who are undecided whether they want abortion or not, but effectively I'm appalled by it. Share with us your thoughts.
It helps abortionists, that's who it helps.
Yeah.
It violates every fundamental freedom that is familiar to a democratic society. The hallmarks of a democratic society are freedom of assembly, freedom of thought, the freedom to exercise your religion. All these things have been eroded before us. Who, except Christians, are going to stand up for the unborn? Nobody else. The humanists aren't going to do it. The atheists aren't going to do it. We are the only ones who will do it. This is an attack on Christianity. They are trying to basically outlaw prayer. It's not prosecutable. We've seen this is not something that's going to work in terms of punishing someone for what they think. And this is not a workable strategy. So within 200 metres of an abortion clinic, all freedoms have been suspended. Everything. And it's been not just suspended, but criminalised. So this is an attack on everything we know to be true and we hold dear to democratic society, and it's draconian, and we have to fight it on every front.
Absolutely. And John, how has the Scottish Government been able to implement this legislation when it goes fundamentally against all our democratic principles, such as freedom of speech, freedom of conscience, freedom of religion, freedom of assembly, which are all the pillars of our institutions of democracy in this country? And then to say that if someone says, look, I oppose, which is the majority of our viewers watching this programme, could end up then facing a criminal fine. And how many people have got £10,000 in their bank account to actually be able to get these sort of fines and tackle them?
Well, the sum of the fine is actually is to make sure that they intimidate as much as possible. And that's what this is all about. This is about intimidating people to just shut up, go away, stop talking about abortion. They will do anything they can to support the great lie of abortion. So that, and sadly what we're seeing exposed now is the poor level of formation of our politicians. In the past, for the past, post Second World War, we saw a flourishing of a human rights understanding, that the dignity of every human person, the importance of democracy, the ability to manifest your beliefs, your faith, be able to speak about that in a democratic society. We had a flourishing of that for a few decades, and sadly we saw some badly motivated ideologues take advantage of that. They used the freedoms, which were supposed to get rid of censorship. They used them to attack traditional values, to attack Christianity in particular, to mock the values of the past, to attack the family. So we've seen those freedoms that were proposed by a healthy democratic society. We saw them misused to attack their own culture. And now, when they've used them to advance their ideology right through our society, they're now imposing their own very strict censorship. So you're not allowed to disagree with them, and they will bring the full might of the law to crush you. So the £10,000 is all about that. Let's intimidate these people. Let's make them go away, because they know that they cannot withstand the power of witness and the power of argument. So they've got to find ways to do that. Now, there's a very interesting Scottish philosopher, Alistair MacIntyre, who looks at the collapse of reason over the last century, and this is a perfect example of it. People now are not reasoning, but they are just using emotion. And what we have is an abortion industry, and that whole ideology from where abortion comes, that ideology using emotion, framing arguments, using slogans, and making sure that people do not engage with the thinking, and then they're using that to impose their own values on everyone. And sadly, our politicians, who should be at the forefront of safeguarding our freedoms, are actually ushering in. And in Scotland, the tragedy in Scotland was we had one single member of the Scottish Parliament who actually voted against this, 1 out of 129. That shows you how bad it is in Scotland. So in Scotland, since 1999, the establishment of the Scottish Parliament, it actually has been an embarrassment to democracy, to see how these politicians practice groupthink. They will be told what to do by their political masters, and they will just implement it, irrespective of the traditions of Europe and actually which were the traditions of Christianity, which respected human beings and expected that humans can reason to find the truth, and democracy would allow us the opportunity to dialogue and identify what are the best policies for allowing our society to flourish. These people do not care about that. They just want to advance their ideology, and they do not care if it damages our fundamental freedoms and it collapses our society.
Really tragic. Thank you for unpacking that. And Maureen, what impact would this have on undecided pregnant women who may be put under a lot of pressure from their partner or from their families to have an abortion, and they go to a clinic, and usually there is Christians and others who are standing up for the unborn and able to give them counselling, and in many cases have actually saved some of these babies from being aborted. Just share with us what impact this will have on undecided pregnant women who are thinking about having a termination.
Well, contrary to popular belief, well, the pro-abortionists anyway, not every woman entering an abortion clinic is happy to do so. Many are undecided, as you said, they're conflicted, they're torn, and they welcome the interception. They welcome the last minute, how can I say, lifeline to help them make another decision. Because again, a lot of the women going into these abortion clinics are not informed themselves. They're told many lies and misinformation, as they like to say, about what is happening to them or what is about to happen. It's a fallacy that every woman is just so happy to enter an abortion clinic and considers the interception and the intrusion and harassment. Now, the harassment has not been proved, by the way, that, what we consider true harassment, I don't think someone offering a leaflet is actually harassment. But many of them are coerced into these abortions, and the coercion is a major issue. It's not being properly addressed by the government, and we have tried to address it at Spark. We have a campaign called Coercion is Abuse, trying to highlight this issue, not only with our supporters to contact their MPs, but to highlight the issue directly with parliamentarians. It's a major issue. The DIY abortions, for instance, don't even afford a woman the opportunity to be intercepted by a compassionate person who's praying. So it's an egregious act, and we really must continue to oppose this on every front.
Yeah, and John, have you seen within the last few years the abortion lobby really step up its plans, because they want no opposition whatsoever, do they, to abortion, and they must absolutely hate organisations like yours, because you're doing a great job in highlighting this. But the fact is that they can coerce, particularly the Scottish government in Scotland, to implement such a George Orwell-Elian legislation, really, that does actually fundamentally goes against every basic human rights that we have in this country and our democratic freedoms to carry out their agenda, and that is to have a termination of babies without any opposition whatsoever.
They're hugely ambitious, and they will stop at nothing, and they have managed to wheedle their way into key positions. So if you look through the health service, if you look at areas that you would expect, if anyone wanted to care about children and childbirth, it would be the Royal College of Midwives. But I'm afraid you've seen that they have been captured by this strong pro-abortion ideology. Similarly for the Royal College of Obstetricians and Gynaecologists, who were against the 1967 Abortion Act, but now again they get infiltrated, and these people work. And I think that they have is a complete and utter willingness to use their organisations to advance their personal ideology, or this ideology that they're all signed up to. And one of I quoted Winston Churchill the weekend at an event I was speaking at, and that was that it's been the weakness of the virtuous that has allowed the evil to flourish. Because so many times when you find Christians are in positions, they would say, well, I can't argue and be biased in favour of my personal views. But whenever you find the ideologues from the pro-abortion side find any position, they will use it relentlessly, and they will run roughshod over anyone's rights to advance their agenda. And that agenda is very well organised. They had a meeting in Brussels of FIAPAC. It's a conference of abortion providers. They had that in Brussels recently, and I know someone who managed to get along to that and actually hear what they were saying. And they were congratulating themselves about how they've managed to frame the abortion issue in our countries, and in particular that they have been using this phrase ad nauseum, that abortion is healthcare. So you'll hear phrases like that on the wider media, but this is carefully crafted sloganising to stop people thinking, and this is what we're up against, so that they have control in the media and they just keep conditioning the general public, and the general public, they're busy trying to get on with their own lives, and I'm afraid they just go for it, you know.
Yeah.
And if we have politicians unwilling to scrutinise, then I'm afraid we're really going down.
So, John, we have less than 2 minutes left of the programme. How can our viewers respond to such horrific legislation, and now the fear that this will also come to the Welsh Assembly in Cardiff, but also could be implemented also by this new Labour government?
Just now, go directly to your politician. I mean, there's petition things you can sign and click a button and it sends an email. Those things, to be honest, are not of great benefit. The thing to do is go straight to them, go and meet them in their office, or a handwritten letter, do something like that, or if you know people who know them, they need to feel what normal people think, rather than just read about it in the press, which is pretty much guided by the pro-abortion ideology.
Yeah, absolutely. So Maureen was in the latest edition of Heart newspaper, and she had the last word in the paper. I'm going to give you the last word on the show. Just share with us how Christians really need to wake up, the church needs to wake up to this issue of the plight of the unborn, and to bring in such extreme, dangerous legislation as we've seen in Scotland to prosecute and give a Christian a criminal record because they want to stand up for the unborn outside an abortion clinic. You know, we might as well be living in George Orwell's Big Brother of 1984, because this is dangerous for our democratic freedoms. This is dangerous for the unborn. Within 30 seconds.
Yeah, absolutely. Christians are the answer to the problem. It's a spiritual battle, we know that. And the only way to address the spiritual issue is with a spiritual weapon. And that's prayer, that's our Christian witness, which is what they're trying to take away, is our Christian witness outside of abortion clinics. Anyway, in fact, today's abortion clinics, where is it tomorrow? We have to fight this issue, and Christians are the answer. It's prayer and action. As he said, contact your MP.
Excellent. So, John and Maureen, thank you so much for being my guests on Politics Day this week. Thank you for bringing this to my attention. And I just want to thank you for watching this programme at home. Can you believe it, that the Scottish Government has introduced legislation that will criminalise Christians for standing up for the unborn outside abortion clinics, together with a £10,000 fine? This is outrageous. We need to pray against it and stand up against this vileness. So thank you for watching this week's edition of Politics Today.